है नवीद रमज़ान, ये है नवीद रमज़ान, नवीद रमज़ान, ये है नवीद रमज़ान, ये है नवीद रमज़ान। रब का मेहमान है ये, हम पर एहसान है ये, रब का मेहमान है ये, हम पर एहसान है ये। कर लो इबादत तुम, रब का है फरमान। ये है नवीद रमज़ान, ये है नवीद रमज़ान, नवीद रमज़ान, ये है नवीद रमज़ान, ये है नवीद रमज़ान, ये है नवीद रमज़ान, ये है नवीद रमज़ान, नवीद रमज़ान, ये है नवीद रमज़ान, ये है नवीद रमज़ान।
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So, Adnan, I've had many questions come forward. People questioning power of dua. People questioning, are our duas being accepted? I, obviously from the masjid point of view, I meet people of all ages. As have buzurgs, we have the new married couples, you have youngsters, you've got children as well. How would you address that to each category?
I think one thing that we first need to understand is that, like you mentioned, the power of dua in itself. How powerful is dua? I think we need to make them aware of that. Of course, looking at the person and their understanding, you won't be speaking to a younger person as you would to an elder person, because I can relate to that as well. When I would lead on sports sessions in schools and within the community, I've done a lot of work, and
But do you have like a congregational dua there?
Say that again.
You have like a congregational dua.
Do you know what? It's funny you mentioned that, because when we did the tournaments through Darul Ihsan, many years ago, through their markaz,
at Vida.
At Vida. Now it's Power League at Vida. We would start with a dua, we would start with khutbah, we would start with zikr, and it was, subhanallah, the way they arranged the zikr to take place in the beginning. You would have proper Darul Ihsan zikr, no messing around.
Okay.
Very powerful, and they had speakers as well. In fact, they didn't even need speakers because they were that loud. And mashallah, very engaging, very powerful zikr.
I believe so.
In Vida.
Yeah.
On pitch 1, I remember. As soon as you walk in, the first one on the right hand side, and a lot of brothers obviously were experiencing it for the first time. And when we had the matches taking place, you had some brothers waiting on the side to then play. They would engage in zikr, because that zikr was so powerful in the beginning. So as they're waiting to go on, they're doing the Darul Ihsan zikr. So we had that, and then of course dua at the end as well. And it was all ages. We had under 16s, if I can remember. So yeah, that's an aspect.
For youngsters, okay, let's take youngsters to begin with.
Yeah.
How do they experience dua? I mean, a youngster would demand, sorry for saying demand, would want to make dua. Let's say if he has, when he comes to exam seasons.
Yeah.
You see, if you look at the other side where you have the elders, they would make dua, for example, for work, making dua for relationships, making dua for any other, issues that elders experience.
Of course.
Whereas youngsters, they don't have those problems. They haven't got problems with work, for money, for health. Alhamdulillah, they fit. Parents providing for anything. The only time they do genuinely want a dua, accepting or demanding a dua is around the exam season.
Exam season, I was just going to say that.
I'm going to give you an example. The way I know that is, when you comes to a masjid, when it comes to GCSE exams, you'll see few youngsters coming into the masjid. And they're there making those duas. And I, being there in the masjid, I would approach them and ask them, bro, how are you? How's everything? I mean, are you new in this area? Not seen you before.
In fact,
and he'll come and say, look, I'm not new, but I've got exams, so I've come to make dua and namaz.
Yeah, subhanallah.
So they do believe
Of course.
that firm belief that Allah Ta'ala is the one that's going to support and make things easy.
Of course.
But they're only going to come in at that exam time. Now, compare that to the pitch. Yeah?
Yep.
Vida, Darul Ihsan.
Yep.
They're looking forward to the game, aren't
To
they?
the game. They want to win.
They want to win.
They want to take the trophy home.
But how does this dua play its part there?
I think again with the youngsters, you've got that element of they're very innocent. So that dua is not going to be specific to, let's say, where with the elders they know what they're going to ask for, and a whole dua could be just subject to work, affairs. Someone wants to buy a car or a house. I've just experienced that with a family member.
Okay.
But with the youngsters in particular, I think because it's so innocent, it makes that aspect more beautiful, and how that plays a part. It's all to do with, like you mentioned, how they've got exam season, so now it's something that they're well aware of and something that they really want to achieve. Now, one way to get youngsters to come closer to the deen, how I find, and we had this on our Friday nights many years ago, was through football. So what we would say to them, that you want to play football, that's fine, but then here's how we're going to do it. You're going to come to the masjid, we're going to have a social, we're going to have a bit of zikr, we're going to have dua. So I think once they kind of understand that along with the dua we have rewards to come, or we have something to enjoy, then it would kind of, it's not more of what effect is the dua going to have, but do they understand how important that dua is?
It's more of tarbiyah for the children than, isn't it?
Yeah.
For them to understand the power of dua.
Just to throw it to them and be like, right, you're making dua today.
Okay.
It's not going to happen. But if you put these things into place, right, we're going to have this, then we're going to have this, we're going to finish with dua. So it makes them actually look forward to the dua, like the Darul Ihsan's good example, the Friday socials we had, the sessions that I had, the brothers in the masjid, of course. They're going to read namaz, they're going to come, they're looking forward to something, and then inshallah they're going to make that dua for that specific thing that they want. And innocence plays a big part, because sometimes they might be asking for something which you shouldn't ask for, but elders would be aware, but they will still ask for it, and that innocence plays a part.
But just based on that innocence, Bilal, if a youngster is making dua, and I know from my understanding of the little knowledge I have of the deen, that it's not a permitted dua. Here's a youngster that's sincerely making a dua, and he desperately wants something happening.
But it's not halal.
Yeah, it's not a dua that you should ask. Like we know there are some duas you can ask, some duas that you should not ask. But he's asking the one that you should not be asking. But he's so sincere in his request from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. How would you see that?
The thing is, I think that's for adults. It's an opportunity to educate, right?
Okay.
But if we're talking about youngsters that are far from the deen and they are recently, started to feel an affiliation towards the deen, then I think at that stage you got to be very careful. It's like a newborn baby in a way.
Okay.
You got to be very careful how you handle it, because if you're not careful, very easily you will deter that person away from that affinity that the child is building towards Allah Ta'ala. And although what he might be asking might not be halal, you got to have, I think, wisdom has to play a part in this, where you got to almost, it's like going to the mosque and you see some people.
What wisdom do you see in that?
Well, I'll give you an example, right? It's like going to the mosque and you see some people coming to the masjid for the first time in Ramadan. They're feeling the vibe. They're coming to the masjid the first time. They'll be reading namaz, and maybe their aura is not covered fully, or they'll be making mistakes. But
and then you get the Babaji saying, "Oh."
And then you get a Babaji saying, "What do you do? Put a hat on." All of these things. If you do that, at that point, that relationship, that newly formed relationship, is so weak. You'll just break the bond.
Yeah, and there's countless examples of that as well, Bilal, by where a child. In fact, I actually experienced this as well in a masjid when I've gone in and I've had a telling off. You could say it was my immaturity, childish behaviour. You were young at the time, so you're not going to see the wisdom which the elder is portraying in their message or in their kind of rollicking to you. So I got a bit of rollicking, I think it was for not wearing the hat on. Now, I didn't go back to that masjid when I at that age because I really feared that person. I thought to myself, do you know what? I don't want to mess my hair up. I've got a bit of a style going on. You know, the V-cut back in the days, it was really famous then. I think I got one of them, so I was like, you know what? It's going to stick up from all sides. I don't want to wear the hat on because it really presses the hair. So I never went in. Whereas if the approach was different, you know, kind of, not towards me, but to anyone, like you said, Betaji, you know, this is where the hats are. Make sure you wear it and cover your head, that kind of thing. So again, I completely agree with what you're saying. And there's countless examples.
And the thing I would say is, if that person is genuinely sincere in their dua, right, Allah Ta'ala knows us better than we know ourselves, right? And indeed, Allah Ta'ala will guide that person to the straight path.
The point I was coming to my mind as this discussion is happening. See, that individual to ask a dua, he because of his ignorance or him being new to this environment, he sat down, he's on the musalla, he prayed his 2 rakat, probably doesn't know whether they were accepted or not. We don't know whether he did wudu properly or not. But to the face of it, he's done what he knew at least. Now when he's making that dua, that sincerity in that dua, I mean, I hope I'm wrong in this, but to an extent you will say his dua is more powerful than many imams. That imam that's making dua 5 times a day after each salah, he's doing it part of a job, part of a role.
It becomes a ritual after a while.
It becomes a ritual.
Yeah.
This he's so sincere in his dua. He's probably got tears in his eyes, which imams has not had for many weeks. But this guy's crying for this thing. And it's a sign of iman. That's what I'm going to try to make. It's a sign of his iman that even though he's not been seeing the masjid for 2 years, but when it comes to his GCSE exams, but now he's there on the musalla and he's making that dua. We may call him whatever you want. Yeah, you may call him a weekly Muslim because he only prays Jummah. An annual Muslim because he's only there on Eid. We have these terms.
We say that, don't we?
Annual Muslim.
We've all
that one's a weekly one. He's a yearly one. But okay, he may be an annual attendee in the masjid. But that very moment when he's making that dua, his level of iman is on a next.
Exactly. Yeah. And
the God consciousness as well. We were saying that annual namazi or he's here just in Ramadan, but the fact that he's not been for the entire year, it's kind of like compensating for all of that time he's missed, and he's put it all into that one dua.
You know, someone mentioned this to me. He said that, you know, maybe another person only reads one salah a day, right?
Okay.
But maybe his salah, he reads it with such kind of focus and affinity and love that is better than all your salahs put together. Right?
Subhanallah.
And going back to the whole thing...
That's a contradictory term in itself.
Well, going back to the...
So we should be quoted for this, you know, out in the public for saying this. But I understand where you're coming from. The Sharia is Sharia. Yeah. The Sharia will only speak for the Zahid, for what's apparent. And we have to pray our daily 5 salahs. But what we're mentioning here is the level of iman and shawq, jazba, passion that he's praying his salah with, or he's making his dua with. How would you maintain that?
I remember you mentioning a waqia once, Hafsab. The one where the child, I can't remember how it goes. It includes the mother, the child, the prayer mat, and the sweet. When she would put a sweet.
Oh yeah, Baba Friduddin.
So how that maintained, and then eventually the sweet was already present, and one day it was in place. Something along those lines.
Yeah. So go on, tell the whole story.
I can't remember the whole story. That's what I'm saying.
But it's essentially associating a reward with a good deed.
Yeah.
Getting
So
into the habit of doing
a good example
deeds.
of how to maintain, like we mentioned earlier, the football, the anticipation. All right, okay, we've got football, but then it's a way of kind of subtly bringing him towards the zikr, to the dua, or, you know, one good one is food is going to be served at the end. So as soon as mans find out there's pizzas, you know, people are, I mean, me and you did that a few times, didn't we?
Jamia? We actually did, and I remember that.
The £10 for 3 pizzas.
Even within psychology, there's a thing called a zone of acceptance. So what you got to offer the other person has to be within his reach. And, you know, to even make large changes, you got to break them down into very, very small changes that are just a bit better than the person's used to.
You don't want to overwhelm them too much.
So you start with the place where you're very close to the person's heart, which is football, it's food, it's whatever, entertainment, right?
Yeah.
And then you use that slowly, you know, introduce the wine
Introduce
to
the
it.
wine, yeah.
Introduce maybe, oh, it's Salah time, let's read Salah.
Yeah.
And over time,
Yeah.
gradually,
Yeah.
with the right company,
Yeah.
the
And
shift
that's
is
what
massive.
Al-Hassan were amazing at. They would hold an annual tournament,
Mm.
and you would actually have footballers and teams coming in from outside of Manchester.
Just to participate in that.
I mean,
in
these
that
guys
tournament.
were amazing. Like, you know, some of them could have made it pro. They were that good. But Al-Hassan, you know, like you mentioned that day, the small picture, the big picture was that to get them engaged in zikr and a ijma'i dua at the end. And I think it was amazing.
I mean, for a lot of youngsters, I think it's giving them that opportunity to come in. The zone of acceptance concept which you're mentioning, I think that taps into my mind at least. I can relate to that. Masajid should, I think, be more welcoming in that sense.
Definitely.
I mean, I'll give you an example just from last night's Tarawih. So I hope Babaji's not watching. Cause
If he's
I'm gonna
watching
get it
this,
tonight.
Hafsab, you're getting it.
Don't name him, it's fine.
I'm not going to name him, but he goes, he was making an announcement, you know, like with the SOPs, you can't leave your shoes.
Yeah.
So you have to put it in a bag. So we're about to start Tarawih, you know, and he goes, "Oi, shoes, I'm going to throw them in the bin." He said it once. After like a minute, I was like, okay, hold on, that's a bit intense. And then he said it again, "I'm going to throw your shoes in the bin, pick them up right now."
Really?
Yeah. Now look, that's somebody's property.
Yeah.
Like, let's say he just bought them a week or two ago, yeah?
Yeah.
He spent a good 50, 60 pounds.
Yeah.
He's going to take care of his shoes. Now next man comes around and says, "Look, I'm going to throw your shoes in the bin." Tell me, is that individual going to come back?
It goes back to
When
wisdom.
you've been challenged in that way.
I mean, the
Yeah,
imam's feeling this way.
Yeah.
I
About
genuinely,
that.
I'm sat in the musalla,
Yeah.
Tarawih is about to begin, and I'm at home thinking, what must that guy be,
Yeah.
must be going through his mind?
Yeah.
Like, is this the way I get treated for coming into the
Yeah,
masjid?
yeah.
But you know-
of course. And that could have been his first time. Could have been his first Tarawih. We don't know.
This is so
Possible.
one is wisdom, and then the second point we were mentioning about integrating the social life into it.
Yeah.
It's I think most massages need to actually become more of community centers
Community
rather than
centres.
just place of
Yeah,
worship.
Yeah.
And that's how you build that integration and and that affinity with the youth. That's how you get them in.
Definitely.
I mean, all it takes is a few members of the youth to come in, become part of the running team of the masjid, and automatically you'll see the vibe change. Now you'll see less presence and the dominance of the elders. They have their own ways.
Yeah.
They will always, I mean, at times it could be harsh. Whereas if you have a young team, now the you viewers are listening, I mean, if you know you have the opportunity to become part of a masjid team in the running, just say as a volunteer, just a few volunteers, that's all it takes. And they will bring their friends. They will bring their friends. And the more come in, the more you'll notice, rather than a Babaji approaching him now and saying, "Look, I'm going to throw your shoes in the bin." There'll be somebody like yourself or by the nan, and he'll say, "Look, bro, could you please put it on the side?"
Yeah.
Like it's SOPs.
Yeah.
Come on, you've got to be
course.
understanding.
I've actually seen that happen in a mosque.
Sometimes
And
what
with
some
that-
people do is, as they're passing by and they see shoes in the way or a chair in the way, honestly, it's just second nature. I've done this many times. They'll just pick up the person's shoes or his belongings.
Just put it
they'll
in
just move
on
it to
the
one
side,
side.
yeah.
And it's as simple as that.
But look, Babaji, yeah, he's got like 100 pair of shoes to deal with now.
I
You
think,
understand where he's coming
but
from?
you know how
What, is this a
mosques-
shoe caretaker or something of the masjid?
You know how
no, he's just basic at the back doing a bit of
Acha, acha.
maintenance. So whilst that was happening, yeah, masajid are under so much pressure because of SOPs. If they don't abide by them, Tarawih will be banned altogether. So
Look,
he's
I
doing
understand
his
his.
bit.
point
I
I was gonna
understand
make.
his
He's
point.
doing his bit, isn't he?
if it's so important, you should have an allocated person as people come in to say, "Brother, can
Make
you
sure you-
make
So
sure."
maybe in this case, that person needs to be changed.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or
I mean, with the masks, they're very strict. If
Yeah.
you've not got, I mean, the other day I didn't have a mask on. I literally thought the Baba was going to give me a jand. He probably would have, but because I was half a sab, I got away with it. Because he man, so I
Yeah. Oh, gets away with it.
But honestly, I think to some extent it's the modernization of the SOPs and procedures within mosques.
Yeah.
They need to start like thinking more of like as an organization and
Yeah.
less
Yeah.
like just this is I'm only here to read the namaz and that's it.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. I mean, a change of words could make a difference to that person's situation. In that scenario, that he could have said, "You know what? A few days ago, someone left their shoes like this, and they got stolen. They got taken. Could you move them?"
Even change of tone.
Change of tone,
Change
change
of
of
tone,
words.
Change
so
of tone. Like You'll be
body
surprised.
language and
The
so many
mentioning
things come into play.
of the disposal of those trainers into the bin, that whole thing doesn't fit.
Just
with me.
imagine we were talking about having that affinity and really sincerity in ibadah. How many people after hearing that would have had sincerity in their worship? They would have been thinking about that
same
guy.
individual. He's in namaz, yeah, and he's that so sincere. Suddenly he is, oh, your shoes are going in the bin.
Sincerity's out.
He's actually thinking in the mad, you know what? Is my shoe still there? Has he putting them in the bin?
That's one way to remove sincerity from people's worship.
I said, by the way, Shari Hukum is, if you know you're going to lose property and you're going to be at loss and you're in namaz, you're actually allowed to break in namaz. So let's suppose I put my phone on the floor and somebody's walking past and I know potentially he's going to step on it because this guy's always got his head in the air.
Sees Imam Saab's got an S21.
Yeah, and he knows he's going to trot over my phone, he's going to break my phone. By Sharia, you're allowed to actually break in namaz and stop that from happening because it's going to cause you financial loss.
Yeah.
That's actually a hukum of Sharia.
How
Similarly, the common example you hear is, if a mother is praying her salah and she knows a child is crying or the child's probably just slipped, he's probably fallen over, accident, anything could happen. She's allowed to break her namaz and attend to her child. And similarly, if you've got your own valuable property that's around you in namaz, firstly, before you start salah, the whole purpose of making intention is that you get rid of all those distractions. So don't put your phone there. Don't put your glasses on the floor. People do that. And they know you got toddlers, you're running around in the house and somebody can step over it. The whole entire namaz, he's not thinking about Allah Ta'ala at all. He's thinking about his glasses on the floor. Oh, my dear soap only many glasses, are you going to break? So that's where his sincerity's gone.
I mean, this is why you buy the replica cases from Lahore.
The lookalikes.
The lookalikes.
But you're right. I think.
So that was just a separate thing I wanted to mention. Coming to the point that masajid being more welcoming, and we started initially. The discussion started with dua, the power in dua, and how we can engage the youth. By then, I'll give a few examples of Darasan, maybe football, maybe any other social activity.
Yeah.
But then introduce them to the concept of dua. One thing I can mention here in the last few minutes I've seen youngsters, they shy away from making dua. And in dua, going a bit more deep, in dua, they don't express themselves to their Lord.
Is that in the mosque, you mean?
Anywhere. Even if they're at home, in their own room. But when they lift their hands for dua, they're actually shy. From asking from Allah. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Do you think that's a product of the society we live in, whereas youngsters now feel like a sign of weakness if they were to show that, almost doing it even in front of anyone, they will see it as a sign of weakness because of the society we live in.
When you're in dua on your own, you're in your room, you've prayed your let's say everyone fasting now, yeah? They're going to go do Maghrib Salah and then they're going to be in their room on their own making that dua. Even in that dua, they're not expressing, they're not crying out to their Lord. They're holding back.
I agree with Bilal by that because we got mobile phones at age of 18, 19.
These guys.
I got mine when I was 23.
Well,
23.
Yeah. So these kids started very young.
Children or youngsters, they have iPad Pros and all these gadgets, PlayStation 5's out now. They get it at such a young age. Maybe they're so used to getting everything they want. Maybe they think, do you know what? I don't even need to make dua. And when they do, it's not as sincere or as expressive.
I think it's because they've never been exposed. They've never been told. They've not been in that environment, in that mahal. So like that Ihsan example you're giving. Yeah. You've got football, but before football, everyone's going to make a congregational dua. So it's introducing youngsters and the generation to dua. Ask your Lord. Even though you're going to succeed, you're going to get the trophy based on your skill and your team play. Yeah. But make that dua. Yeah. Whether you win or not, make that dua.
You mentioned about sincerity of dua. I think linking the dots here, a byproduct of all the technology that youngsters have at a very young age now is that they're exposed to so much content that they become almost like emotionally, they feel nothing. They actually become emotionless, and that's why they have difficulty now even if they're on their own in the room, to actually show emotion. I think that's a generational issue that we have to deal with, which is how do you
think
ensure
about it,
emotion in dua?
Don't you think that is sad?
It's very sad, but the reality is we're showing youngsters
These guys
content
could be
they're not ready for.
could be mega
mature
intellects. They could have masters,
Yeah.
PhDs, and whatever.
They can't show emotion.
But they can't show emotion even to their Lord.
Well, that's the
I
reality.
think let's take a break here.
Yeah.
Tomorrow we continue on
We
the
continue
subject.
this, yeah.
Inshallah.
Let's talk about sincerity in dua and why the current generation or the generations to come, they're not feeling that affinity, that power of dua. And why do you think the generation is holding back? I think that something's gone wrong. Massively gone wrong, and it's a huge problem. It has to be. Let's try to give solutions. The whole purpose of this podcast is we give solutions. In this segment, we've discussed the problems, and we've not really highlighted any solutions. So solutions in next episode. What do you guess?
Inshallah. Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
inshallah. Take it.
Inshallah.
Okay.
ये है नवीद रमज़ान, ये है नवीद रमज़ान, नवीद रमज़ान, ये है नवीद रमज़ान, ये है नवीद रमज़ान। रब का मेहमान है ये, हम पर एहसान है ये। रब का मेहमान है ये, हम पर एहसान है ये। कर लो इबादत तुम, रब का है फरमान। ये है नवीद रमज़ान, ये है नवीद रमज़ान, नवीद रमज़ान, ये है नवीद रमज़ान।